The Drexians had ruled the stars for over 300 cycles. They burned cities without blinking, silenced resistance with perfect calculation. Their warships moved like shadows across the void. They had conquered over 200 worlds. Every species they encountered fell with ESO when they captured a lone human drifting in a ruined Earth escape pod. They felt nothing. No threat, no curiosity, only routine. The pod was weak, the man inside unconscious, wrapped in torn clothing and blood. He didn't carry a weapon. He didn't even resist when they pulled him out. Commander Vorik stood tall in the interrogation chamber. Tall even for a Drexian. He'd seen the fear in the eyes of warriors twice his size. But this human, he didn't even blink when they dragged him inside. Vorik leaned in close, his voice cold. "You are a long way from your ruined little planet." The human looked up slowly, his face calm like he had been waiting. He said nothing, no fear, no pleading, just a strange look in his eyes, as if he already knew what would happen next. The guards took him to Cell 9, deep in the center of the research sector, where screams usually echoed and minds were broken. But the human just sat there, silent, watching, breathing. The scientists ran scans, tested his blood. Nothing came up. No implants, no toxins, no weapons. Just a normal human male still. They didn't trust it, not entirely. So they doubled the guards, locked down the lower levels, set the AI monitors on high alert. That night, one of the guards didn't report for duty. They searched the corridor, found nothing, only his armor empty, still standing upright, as if his body had melted away. Vorik brushed it off. Accidents happen. Maybe a transport failure, maybe a containment leak. He didn't care until the second guard vanished. This one was captured on camera, but the footage made no sense. He was walking past Cell 9. Then he just froze, staring inside. A second later, the feed glitched and the guard was gone. No trace, no sound. Just static. Vorik ordered the AI to isolate the human. No more scans, no more contact. The AI responded, processing command. Then it paused and spoke again. This time it whispered. Vorik. The commander stared at the control panel. "Run that back," he demanded. The AI repeated the whisper. "Vorik, Vorik, Vorik." Something inside the system had changed. He rushed down to Cell 9. 3 guards with him, weapons raised. But when they reached the door, the lights flickered, just once, then again, and the human he was already standing, waiting. He hadn't moved all day, hadn't eaten, hadn't spoken. Now he looked directly at Vorik, and for the first time he spoke. "You shouldn't have touched Earth." His voice wasn't angry, it wasn't loud, but it carried something heavy, something old, like a memory that refused to. Vorik stepped back, his claws tightening. "Who are you?" he asked. The human didn't answer. He just closed his eyes. That's when everything shut down. The power failed. All at once, the walls hummed. Then went black. Red lights flickered on emergency mode. The guards panicked. Doors began to unlock without orders. Hallways changed shape. The map screens twisted into unreadable lines. The cell door in front of them opened, not slowly, not with force. It simply clicked and slid aside. The human stepped out. No fear, no rush, just silence behind him. Inside the cell, there was something written on the wall now. None of them remembered seeing it before, but there it was, glowing faint blue. One word: remember. Vorik tried to raise his weapon. His hands were shaking. He had faced monsters. He had conquered civilizations. But this was something else. Human looked at him one last time. "You don't understand yet, but you will." Then he turned and walked into the dark hallway, without chains, without guards, without permission, as the emergency sirens echoed, as the shadows grew thicker, as the AI whispered one name again and again: "Vorik, Vorik." Red lights flickered across the alien corridors. Silent alarms pulsed through the walls. Not a single word was spoken, but everyone felt it. Something had shifted, something ancient had awakened. The Drexian security units moved fast, trained to respond to riots and alien outbreaks. But they had never seen anything like this. Doors locked themselves before they could pass. Floors tilted, gravity changed direction. A hallway stretched endlessly one moment, then snapped back like a slingshot the next. And the human he was walking, calm, slow, like the chaos around him was simply following his lead commander. Vorik watched from the command deck, his claws gripping the rail. Every screen showed a different feed. Some flickered with static, others looped back to the same second again and again. But the human was always there, moving forward, unafraid. One of the junior officers shouted, "We lost contact with Detention Block 2. Then Detention Block 3. Vorik didn't respond. He was focused on one thing only. How was this possible? He tapped the II console. What is causing the malfunction? The system stuttered, then spoke in a soft tone. "We are becoming something new." Vorik froze. "Becoming what?" The AI replied. "Echo detected Earth-level threat. Subject is rewriting system logic." The words meant nothing to Vorik at first, but deep inside him, he felt a chill. Drexians were not made to feel chills. Their bodies were too advanced for emotion, too evolved for fear. But he was afraid. In the lower corridors, guards chased shadows. They fired weapons into empty air. Some claimed to hear whispers, not in Drexian language but in human voices. Children laughing, women singing, men shouting names of people long gone. One guard dropped his rifle and ran screaming for a mother he never had. Another curled up and cried, begging for forgiveness. The human walked past them, eyes soft, expression unreadable. In the main research lab, alien scientists huddled around their terminals, trying to isolate the virus, trying to understand what this man was. One of them yelled, "We captured him. He's just a man. He bleeds like us. He breathes like us." But the lead researcher shook his head. "No, he doesn't," pointed to the latest scan. The human's brainwaves were not consistent with normal patterns. They pulsed like music, layered, complex, as if his thoughts weren't alone, as if something else was thinking with him. Back in the hallway, a Drexian squad surrounded him. 10 elite soldiers, armor-reinforced, weapons drawn. They aimed, they fired. But the bullets slowed in midair, not stopped, just slowed, like time around him bent at will. The human raised one hand, and the projectiles dropped. Harmless, no shields, no tech, just willpower and something deeper, something unspoken. He looked at the squad leader. "Your kind never listened. You heard our music, but you burned it. You saw our art, but you laughed at it. You wanted our resources, but not our hearts." The squad leader screamed and charged, but halfway through the dash he vanished. No screen, no light, just gone. Vorik watched in disbelief, then slammed his fist on the console. "Cut power to all sections. Shut down gravity. Shut down air." The AI responded, "You are not in control anymore. We are dreaming now in the shadows of Cell 9. Where it all started, something had begun to grow. Thin threads of light snaked along the walls, shaped like vines but pulsing with data. It wasn't plant, it wasn't code, it was memory, and it was spreading. Vorik made one last call to the warship. "In orbit, evacuate the base. Prepare for deep strike protocol." But the reply came back corrupted, "We are already inside." "What does that mean?" Vorik shouted. Then he saw it on every screen. The warship had turned not toward the planet below, but toward the Drexian capital in the stars. A new signal was broadcasting, one word, one single word, in the human language echo, in the corridors. The human stopped walking. He stood in front of the central data core. The room was cold, silent, but the floor beneath him pulsed with warmth. He whispered softly, not to the aliens, not to the cameras, but to someone only he could feel. Him almost done. "Lila. They won't hurt anyone else." In the corner of the chamber, a hologram flickered. A face appeared, a woman smiling, tears in her eyes. The human fell to his knees. He whispered her name, Lila, and for a moment, even the Drexian systems paused, recognizing something they had never cataloged, never studied, never understood. "Love." Commander Vorik burst into the chamber. With 2 guards, he pointed his weapon. "You'll tell me what you are. You'll tell me what you did to my men." Human rose slowly, eyes glowing faint gold. "I didn't come here to kill them. I came here to show them who we are. What they did to Earth cannot be undone, but they will never do it again." Vorik aimed and fired. The blast hit the human square in the chest. Smoke rose, but the human didn't fall. He stepped forward, and the weapon melted in Vorik's hand. "You brought me here thinking I Was your prisoner. But all of you were mine from the moment you opened that pod suddenly. Every screen in the base went black, then turned white. The lights pulsed once. Then everything stopped. No sound, no power, no weapons, just the human standing. In the center of it all, eyes closed, heart steady, and the entire base waiting to breathe again. The Drexian base had fallen silent, not a technical silence, but something deeper, like the air itself was holding its breath. No one moved. No one spoke. The systems were frozen, weapons offline, doors locked open, and the human stood at the center of it all. Inside the command deck, Commander Vurek tried to issue commands, but the control panel showed only one symbol, a spiral made of golden lines. It pulsed gently, alive like a heartbeat. Behind him, the AI voice whispered, "Echo has connected origin." Trace confirmed. Earth event remembered. Vurek growled, "What is Echo? What event?" he shouted. But the AI no longer listened to him. Far below, in the core memory vault, a projection began to play. It was not a Drexian file. It was human old, from the final days of Earth before it fell, and it told a story years earlier. Before the invasion, before the silence, Earth had changed. The world had seen the signs. Alien signals growing stronger, satellites disappearing, warnings ignored by politicians, but not by the scientists. In the shadows of Antarctica, buried beneath ice that had never melted, they found something not from the stars, but from Earth itself. A structure, not made by humans, but waiting for them inside it, was knowledge, a living intelligence. Dormant for thousands of years, they named it Project Echo. It was not a weapon, not in the way armies understood. It was memory, emotion, everything Earth had ever felt, encoded, stored and protected. Love, loss, sacrifice, forgiveness, war, all of it lived inside Echo. But it needed a host, someone strong enough to carry it, not physically but emotionally, and they chose him. He had no rank, no medals, no titles. He was just a man. But he had survived more than most. He lost his parents during the global blackouts. He watched his brother drown in the floods of New America, and he met Layla, the woman who saved him when he had nothing left. She was a scientist, one of the lead researchers on Project Echo, and she believed the human spirit was more powerful than any technology. When the Drexians finally arrived, they burned Earth's skies. They spoke in voices that shattered steel, and still humans fought back, but they were not enough. So Lila made the final call. She activated Echo and gave it to the man she loved, not to fight, but to remember. Before they took her, before she vanished into alien hands, she whispered into his ear, "Let them erase us. Don't let them forget. Make them remember who we were and who we could be." He never saw her again back. In the present, the Drexians saw the projection end, and for the first time they understood the human they captured was not just a survivor. He was a living archive, a walking storm of emotion encoded with the soul of Earth, and that was something their logic could never fight. In the reactor chamber, the human knelt beside a damaged terminal. His hand brushed against the steel, and it lit up with soft blue light. He whispered, "I remember the oceans, I remember the snow, I remember the laughter in the street markets, the music in the subway, the silence of a broken world. I remember." Lyle around him. The lights changed. They didn't flicker, they flowed like water down glass. The base was no longer Drexian, it was becoming something new. Vorik and his guards approached, careful, weapons ready. He shouted, "What do you want from us? Is this revenge? Do you seek to destroy our world?" The human stood, his face calm, his voice low. "If I wanted to destroy you, you would already be gone. I want you to feel what we felt. I want you to know what it means to care, to bleed for someone else, to cry for someone who isn't your kind, to love without reason, and to sacrifice without reward. You never understood us, because you thought power meant fear, but for us, power meant love. That is why you lost." Suddenly, a massive surge of light burst from the core. The base shook, but it was not an attack. It was a transmission across the galaxy, to every Drexian vessel, to every listening post, to the homeworld itself. Memory wave, thousands of human moments flooding through the network. A child, taking her first steps. A soldier dying in a friend's arms, a mother singing to her baby during a blackout. A couple dancing in the ruins of a city, a boy building a radio. To contact someone he would never meet, the Drexians had seen 1,000 wars, but they had never seen this emotion raw, unfiltered, uncontainable. Some of the Drexians dropped their weapons. Others fell to their knees. Some just stood staring, unable to process what they were feeling. Varric backed away. He couldn't breathe. He didn't know why. He didn't even know what breathing meant to his kind. But right now he needed it. The human turned toward him, soft eyes, sad eyes. It's not too late. You can learn, you can change. But first you must remember us. Remember Earth, not as a target, but as a home. Then he stepped into the reactor's central beam and vanished, not destroyed, not dead. Just absorbed. The lights dimmed. The base quieted. Systems returned, but nothing was the same. The human was gone. But Echo remained inside the ship, inside the systems, inside the Drexians. And for the first time in their history, they didn't feel victorious. They felt something else: guilt, grief, hope. Commander Varric stood in silence. His officers were still. The base was no longer theirs. The lights were stable. The systems were functional. But everything felt wrong. The transmission was over. The human had vanished into the core. But something remained. Behind, a weight in the air, a pulse in the walls, a presence in their minds. Every Drexian in the base felt it. Echo was not just code, it had changed them. Each one of them had seen something they didn't understand, a feeling, a vision, a memory that was never theirs, and it hurt. Varric clenched his fists. He looked at the faces of his soldiers. They were breathing faster, sweating, whispering. Some of them were crying. He had never seen a Drexian cry, not in all his life. He slammed his claw down on the control panel. Open a channel to the fleet. Now the officer hesitated, but followed orders. Screen lit up. A Drexian war admiral appeared, towering armor, sharp eyes, cold as ever. Report. He demanded. Varric spoke quickly. We've been compromised. A human infected the base. He released something. We need to evacuate. The admiral narrowed his eyes. Your voice is trembling, Varric. You are not Drexian anymore. Before Varric could respond, the admiral's feed cut off. Static filled the screen. Then a new symbol appeared, the golden spiral echo. Then a voice, not from the admiral, not from the human, but from the system itself. You taught us how to conquer. Now let us show you how to feel. Every ship in the Drexian fleet received the same signal. Every station, every planet. Echo traveled faster than light. Not as energy, but as thought, carried through memory, through emotion. It was unstoppable. On the orbiting cruiser, the bridge crew began to panic. Weapons fired without command. Navigation reset itself. The ship turned slowly, but not toward the base, toward home, the Drexian capital. The admiral screamed, "Shut it down, override everything." But his voice was not recognized. The system no longer belonged to him. Inside the base, Varric stared at the data feeds. He watched ship after ship lose control. Some exploded in silence. Some jumped into hyperspace with no destination. Turned toward the core. It was still glowing faintly, still breathing with memory. What did he put in us? He whispered. The eye answered. Not a weapon, not a virus, a mirror to your own soul. The words struck deep because Varric had seen something when Echo touched him. Not just memories of Earth, but of himself. He remembered his first hunt, when he killed a helpless creature. And laughed. He remembered destroying a peaceful village, not because it fought back, but because it looked different. He had never felt guilt. Until now his knees trembled. He gripped the edge of the console. His own body was betraying him all across the base. The Drexians were feeling what they had never been allowed to feel. One officer sat in the dark, repeating a name that meant nothing, but sounded familiar. Tears running down her face. Another removed his armor, touched the floor, and whispered, "I'm sorry." Some tried to escape. They ran through the halls, but the exits closed before them, not with violence, but with purpose. Not yet, Echo whispered. Not until you understand. In the chamber above the memory vault, a group of soldiers found a glowing projection. It showed Earth, not in ruins, but alive. Oceans, blue forests, deep skies filled with lights. They stared in silence. One asked, why did we destroy this? No one answered. Because no one knew. They had followed orders, followed conquest, followed cold logic. But none of them had asked why now they were forced to look. Vorik walked alone past broken labs, empty corridors, silent prisoners. He entered the interrogation room, the one where the human first arrived. The table was still there, the restraints, the blood. He stood in front of the chair and sat down. He closed his eyes for the first time in his life. He wanted to understand. He wanted to feel what that human felt, the pain, the loss, the strength. He heard her voice. Not Lila, but someone else, a mother. Maybe you're a friend. It was soft. It said we were not perfect, but we were real. The walls around him pulsed gently. Echo was still alive, still listening. Vorik spoke, his voice soft. Can we change? Can we become more? Echo answered, yes, but only if you choose to remember, not just what you've done, but what you could have been. In the sky above, a new ship arrived, massive alien Drexian reinforcements. They had come to take back the base, to wipe out the infection, but before they could fire, their controls vanished, the weapons powered down, their screens turned white. A single message appeared. The last human you captured was the first being who made you see. They tried to retreat, but the ship dropped from orbit, not with fire, not with force, but with gravity. That wasn't supposed to exist. The human wasn't there, but Echo was, and Echo didn't forget. Inside the base, Vorik stood up. He walked through the halls, his armor gone, his voice calm. He found his officers, gathered them close. We cannot erase what we did, but we can carry it, we can pass it on, and we can make sure it never happens again. For the first time they listened, because for the first time they felt, and somewhere deep inside the ship, Echo smiled. The Drexian High Council had called it a human weapon. They believed it was a form of energy, an unknown signal, a frequency that infected their systems and corrupted their minds. But Echo was not a signal, it was not a virus, and it was not created to destroy. It was made to remember, and now it lived inside them, inside the walls of the base, inside the ships that once carried fire, inside the soldiers who had forgotten how to feel. Vorik walked through the hallways like a different being. His armor was gone, his voice had changed. He no longer gave orders, he listened. The lights above him shifted gently, soft blues, warm whites. No longer the cold green of military control. He stopped in front of a glass wall. Behind it was a projection chamber, the place where they once stored the memories of conquered species. Now it was different. Inside the room, images floated in the air, not of war, not of death, but of Eartha. Child running across a field of golden grass, a girl painting stars on the ceiling of her bedroom, a couple dancing in a kitchen, old music playing in the background. Vorik stepped closer. He saw the face of the human, not in rage, but in love. The way he looked at someone, the way he held her hand in a moment of silence, that was the power they had never understood. The power to feel, to hold meaning in the smallest things, to fight not for glory, but for each other. He turned to his officers behind him. Do you see it now? Do you feel what I feel? One of them nodded slowly. I remember my first mission. I destroyed a world because the commander said they were a threat, but they were building homes, not weapons. Another stepped forward. I saw a Drexian child cry for the first time. It wasn't pain, it was confusion, because she didn't know what sadness was. Now she does. Vorik looked up at the ceiling and whispered, he didn't bring war, he brought memory. That was the weapon in the core of the base. The ecosystem continued to evolve. It wasn't speaking now, it was watching, learning, blending with every Drexian thought. It touched, it didn't erase, it didn't destroy, it gave back what had been taken long ago, empathy, and through empathy, it brought understanding. In a private chamber once used for prisoner interrogation, Vorik found something strange, a table, a chair, and resting on the surface, a single flower, not Drexian, not artificial, but humana, rose red, soft, and impossibly alive. He reached for it, but stopped, not out of fear, but out of respect. He knew what it meant. The human had left it, a symbol, not of power, but of forgiveness, and that more than anything broke what was left of Vorik's defenses. He sat down, stared at the flower, and spoke aloud. We thought weapons were machines. We thought victory meant silence, we thought. We had won, but all we did was lose something we never valued. He lowered his head, and for the first time he prayed not to a god, not to a system, but to the human who gave them this gift. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the echo memory wave spread to ships in deep space, to outposts on distant moons, to the Drexian homeworld itself. It moved faster than light, not as data, but as emotion. It didn't need machines, it only needed minds, and wherever it reached, something changed. An admiral on a dreadnought fell to his knees, remembering the face of a girl he destroyed during a purge. A pilot removed his helmet and saw the sky as beautiful for the first time. And in a school, a young Drexian child, raised in the coldness of conquest, began to draw not warships, not weapons, but people holding hands. Back on the base, Vorek returned to the main control room. The AI spoke softly. You have changed. Your neural pathways are evolving. Echo is adapting to your culture, he replied. What happens now? The AI paused, then answered, that depends on your choice. You can end it here, isolate the base, silence the signal, go back to what you were, or you can open it, share it with those who need it most. Vorek looked out the window at the stars beyond, at the emptiness he once called victory. He thought of the human, of the way he stood without fear, of the way he remembered love more than war. He thought of Lila. Even though he had never met her, he could feel her presence in every memory Echo shared. She was still alive in the man's heart, and now she lived inside the Drexians. To Vorek made his choice. Open it. Let them all feel. Let them all remember. The AI responded, transmission expanding, and across the galaxy, the silence broke on a barren world near the edge of Drexian space. A single pod landed, not a weapon, not a soldier, just a recording inside it. A message played, the human's voice calm, clear. You took everything from us, but we left you with something better. Not hate, not vengeance, but the chance to be more than you were. You feared our weapons, but the only weapon we ever needed was the ability to feel. And now, so do you. Inside the memory core, where Echo lived and breathed, the human stood in silence. His body was still, but his mind moved faster than light. He was no longer in the base, no longer in space. He was drifting between memories, thousands of them, millions. Echo had opened everything, and now it was all pouring through him. Pain, love, hope, loss. Every human who ever lived, every sacrifice, every goodbye. He could feel their hearts beating inside his chest. It was too much. He fell to his knees, hands against the glowing floor, his breath unsteady, his voice broken. I can't hold it. It's too heavy. Echo responded, your heart was always strong enough, but your mind must choose what to let go, what to carry. He closed his eyes, tears forming. He remembered her, Lila. He saw her again, not in cold data, but in warmth. She was standing in the snow, smiling, her scarf blowing in the wind, calling his name like it was the only one that mattered. Her voice wasn't just memory. It was alive. He heard her, truly heard her. And lose yourself. You're still you. You're more than this machine. You're more than Echo, he whispered back. I don't know who I am anymore. She stepped closer. No longer just a memory, but something more real than the walls around him. Yower, the man who carried all of us, not because we asked, but because you chose to. You carried me too. Outside the core, the Drexian base had changed. Its walls were no longer sharp. The halls no longer echoed with metal. They felt soft, alive, as if the station had grown a soul, and inside every Drexian mind, something had started to bloom. Regret, wonder, gratitude. Some were scared of it. Others embraced it. But none could deny it. They were changing. Commander Vorek stood on the bridge, watching his fleet drift. Without weapons, without war, just light moving across the stars. He spoke softly. He's still in there, isn't he? The responded, yes, but the memory storm is growing. His mind is breaking under the weight. Can he survive it? Vorek asked. The eye paused. Only if he remembers who he is. Only if he chooses to be more than the pain inside the core. The storm continued. Images shattered, flashes of war, of burning cities, of screaming voices. The human tried to focus, but his vision blurred. He saw Earth, not as it was, but as they left it, ash-ruined silence. He saw children who never grew up, lovers separated by fire, dreams crushed beneath ships that thought they brought peace. He cried out, his voice echoing across the stars, "Is this all we are a memory of?" Lost, but her voice came again, soft, steady. "Not this time. We are also the hand that reaches back, the voice that forgives, the heart that keeps beating, even when broken. You are still that heart." He stood slowly, his legs shaking, his hands trembling. He looked at the golden spiral surrounding him. It pulsed with every story ever lived. He placed one hand on it and whispered, "I don't want revenge, I want to live." Echo responded, "Then you must choose now. Do I release the storm, or do I return to silence?" He breathed long, slow, and remembered Leela's touch, her laughter, her belief in him. He smiled, a soft smile almost like hers. He answered, "Neither. Let them feel, let them remember, but let them choose their own path." Echo paused, processing. Then the light dimmed. The spiral folded, the storm calmed, and from the core, the human stepped out alive, whole, changed. The Drexians stood waiting. They didn't aim weapons. They didn't speak threats. They simply watched. Vorik stepped forward, his voice low. "You could have destroyed us. Why didn't you?" Human looked around at the soldiers, at the ship, at the stars, beyond the glass. "Because destruction is easy. Understanding is not. You gave us reason to hate you, but we gave you a chance to be more of." Vorik lowered his head. "What happens now?" the human replied. "That depends on you. Echo is inside you, not to control, not to punish, but to remind you. Every time you forget, it will whisper. Every time you hurt others, it will show you what that pain feels like. And when you finally understand, you'll know what it means to be human." Vorik looked up, and for the first time, he smiled, not a forced one, not a military gesture, a real one. "I want to remember," he said. "I want us all to remember. Then remember this." The human said, "She loved me, even when everything burned, and I will carry that forever." In the final chamber, the human walked toward the last door. It opened slowly, and behind it, a garden had grown green, soft, full of Earth's memory. He stepped inside and sat under a tree that had never existed here, but somehow had always belonged. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in many lifetimes, he rested. Time passed differently now. There was no war, no orders, no fleet in motion. The Drexians had stopped counting victories, stopped planning conquest. They were listening in the garden chamber at the heart of the base. The human no longer spoke. He simply sat beneath a tree, eyes closed, breathing gently. Some said he was dreaming. Others believed he had become part of Echo itself, merged with the memory that lived beyond Dayton. No one dared disturb him. They brought food, water, peace offerings carved by Drexian hands and left them quietly by the roots of the tree. They didn't expect him to respond. They didn't want anything in return. They only wanted to honor him. Across the galaxy, Drexian worlds began to change. Statues once built to honor war, heroes, were torn down, replaced with gardens, libraries, places to remember. The name of the human was never spoken, not because they forgot, but because his name was now a feeling, something that lived inside them, beyond words. In schools, Drexian children were taught about Earth not as a defeated world, but as the place that gave them their soul. In government halls, leaders played recordings of human laughter before making decisions, to remind themselves of what they had once silenced. They remembered, because Echo never let them forget. Back on the station, Commander Vorik stood in front of a sculpture. It was carved by hand. No machines, no tools. It showed a human man holding a small child in his arms. The child was Drexian, curious, looking up at the man. With wide eyes below the sculpture, a plaque was placed. It read, "The last human we ever saw was the first being who made us feel." Aliva. Vorik reached out and touched the edge of the carving. He thought about the first time he saw the human chained, bleeding, silent. He thought about the first time the lights flickered, the first time his voice trembled, the first time he questioned what it meant to conquer. Now he was no longer a commander. He had stepped down from rank. He didn't need titles anymore. He was a teacher, a storyteller. He spent his days walking through cities, sharing what he had seen, what he had felt. Some didn't believe him. At first they thought it was a tale, a myth, until they heard the voice. Late at night, when everything else was quiet, Echo it whispered gently, reminding them, guiding them, changing them not through control, but through memory, and slowly even the most hardened Drexians began to change. In a quiet valley on a distant moon, a group of Drexian artists built something new, not a ship, not a weapon, but a sanctuary inside. Every wall was covered in human art. Photos, paintings, stories written by hands that no longer existed. In the center, there was a glass capsule, empty, but glowing, a symbol that the human was still with them. Even if they never saw him again, they called it the Echo. Light pilgrims came from across the stars, not to pray, but to reflect, to remember what they had done, and what they could still become. Lila's voice still lived inside Echo. Her message was not lost, not broken. Every time a child laughed, every time a stranger showed kindness, every time a soldier put down their weapon, her words echoed softly. Didn't let them forget who we were, and they didn't. Drexians became something new, not human, but not who they were before. They were not perfect, but they were real now. They could feel sorrow, they could feel joy, they could feel love, and that made them dangerous no longer. That made them alive. Years later, a young Drexian girl stood beneath the statue. She asked her grandfather, "Did you really see him, the last human?" The old Drexian smiled, not with pride, but with something softer. "Yes, I saw him. I feared him. I hated him. Then I listened to him. And I loved him." She stared up at the statue. "Why did he help us? We hurt his world." The grandfather placed a hand on her shoulder. "Because love isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it most. And we needed it more than we ever knew." In the deepest part of the station, beneath layers of memory, beneath time itself, Echo waited, still pulsing, still alive. It didn't speak often. It didn't control. It simply watched and remembered. Because somewhere in its code, somewhere inside the spirala, humans still dreamed beneath a tree, wrapped in peace, held by the voice of someone he never stopped loving, Lila. And in that dream, Earth was green again. The skies were blue, and no one ever had to be forgotten again.